Okay, everyone. Thank you. We're going to learn. We're going to learn. Okay, so I'm going to do something very weird. We're all, you know, we're all ready to break out of the exile already and go to the redemption. So I feel like I need a little redemptive light. I need a little Mashiach energy in my soul, and in a way that is not the normal method. Everything is happening in the world is not normal now. So sometimes we just have to do something crazy. So I want to do something crazy with you today. I actually sat down with someone and studied an entire talk of the Rebbe to give today, and pretty awesome, pretty powerful talk, but I didn't feel its energy like it's giving any. It'll be teaching about different levels of Avram's revelation and Lech Lecha, and for some reason I didn't feel it in my kishkis, in my gut, the kishkis, the gut, that it would be a message relatable, particularly right now, to the Jewish people. So I came here about an hour and a half ago, and I'm like looking here and looking there and sticking my nose into this book and sticking my nose into that book and getting very frustrated. I'm just not finding it. There's nothing that's turning the light on for me. You need a light bulb. You need the trigger. There's nothing that I can get excited about right now. Oh, wow, I have something to share. Then I remember that I have a book. It's called Zohar HaGeula, which means it's a book that was put together. I guess the Lubavitcher Rebbe, asked that we should study in Yana Gula Mashiach, matters of redemption. So I've been giving actually a class for 2-3 years. It's a shame I stopped, but I did stop. It was called Mashiach Matters. Once a week, I was following a book that had like a massive collection of all the aspects of Torah that relate to Mashiach in every parsha. And I was teaching from that book. It's called Yalkut Mashiach HaGeula. It's a book that was put together by a fellow by name Rabbi Dubov, but he just did, nothing of his own. He's just collecting. He was just looking through. He had a massive library. He was collecting any commentary or teaching, Kabbalah, mysticism, Hasidus, from the Rishonim, Achronim, which means early commentators, later commentators. He gathered together, and he has an entire book on each Torah portion for Mashiach. So I already taught all the Parshios until Toldos. Vayeira, there's like probably 20, I would say probably like 30 classes, which I've given over a span of time, directly related to Geula and Mashiach and Parshas Vayeira. So I actually grabbed that book too to see if there's anything that's going to catch me that I'll get excited about and be able to share. And again, maybe I didn't spend enough time, but from there I remembered, there's another book I have on Mashiach. And that is, as I mentioned, this is called Zohar HaGeula. This is a collection of all the passages of the Zohar that speak about Mashiach, about the redemption. And so I figured, let me see what there is in Parshas Vayeira, on this week's Torah portion from the Zohar on the redemption. And over here, there's probably about 6 passages in the Zohar, Parshas Vayeira, 6 or 7, that talk about redemption, phenomenal things. So I started reading it like about an hour ago, so I didn't really ponder this too long. This was my last ditch to have something to share with you. And I think there is some really exciting stuff here I'd like to share. Now, Zohar is obviously a locked book. It's a mystical book written, by Reb Shimon Bar Yochai close to 2,000 years ago. And the way Pnimius HaTorah, the inner light of the Torah, are revealed to the world is that there are commentators that kind of take the concepts of Zohar and make it palpable and tangible, that we should understand it, or else it's a mystery. So usually when I teach Zohar, and we do teach sometimes the Zohar, but I usually teach it only through the Alter Rebbe's eyes. There's Zalman of Liadi, his son, the Mittler Rebbe, there's a sefer called Biurei HaZohar. So we usually go from there. To take raw Zohar and teach raw Zohar just on my own, I don't do that. But today, why not? let's let's leap and never know. Okay, so it's interesting that one of the passages of the Zohar that we're going to learn in this week says that there are certain secrets about redemption that are closed, and they're not meant to be known until literally seconds before the Mashiach. That's when they're meant to be known. So maybe, and we know we're the seconds before the Mashiach right now. So who knows? We might fall on a gold mine over here. So these are I'm not teaching one teaching today. I'm going to be reading for you different passages, all different ideas relating to concepts of the Parsha, how it is translated and relates to Mashiach, and the redemption that's unfolding. And amidst, we might find some really cool things. And I say cool, I mean hot, warm, inspiring, fiery, and things that can perhaps shed light into the uniqueness of our times that we're living right now. Okay. So I'll start with one of the parts. This is in Zohar, this is Vayeira, this week's Torah portion, Daf Kuv Gimel Lamed Beis. A fascinating teaching, which talks about the greatness, and this fits very well. This is another announcement I will make. Not tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. Today is Monday, the 15th of Cheshvan. Tomorrow is Tuesday, Wednesday. Wednesday, Bezrat Hashem, we're going to be starting to learn a new discourse in which I teach every day 5 minutes of Mashiach discourse, which means the subject of it is Mashiach, and it's from the Lubavitcher Rebbe's discourses that he said the last day of Pesach, which is Mashiach's day, Achron Shel Pesach. So we're going along the years that the Rebbe said a mimer, starting from 1951 was the first year, 52. So we covered already 1951, 1952, and tomorrow we're finishing 1953. And then we're going to go on to 1954. So it's a good thing to join. It's a 5 minutes, 5 to 6 minutes. I usually push it closer to 6 minutes. But it's a small teaching every day. You get to learn these phenomenal ideas. The one we've finished learning right now speaks about the extraordinary greatness of Mashiach, and the wisdom and the levels that he attains, and that he reaches higher than Moshe Rabbeinu, higher than Adam Arishon, to open up doors of godly knowledge and understanding and exposing Hashem like no other. Well, that is discussed in this first piece of Zohar, which, as it relates to today's Torah portion, it's talking on the story where it says that the angels come to Abraham, and they're having this conversation with him. Then they ask him, "Where's your wife?" And they want to give her the news that she's going to have a baby in a year. It says that the angel, it says, "Where's Sarah, your wife?" He says she's in the tent. Now the angel doesn't go into the tent. He just asked, where is the angel? Doesn't go. Angel stays outside of the tent, and he's talking to Avram. And he says, Shoiv Ashiv Alecha, I will return to you. And then it says, Vayomer, he says, Shoiv Ashiv Alecha, I will return to you, Ke'ez Chaya, as the time of life, which means in a year from now, the simple meaning. Well, the Sarah Bain, and Sarah is going to have a child. It means Isaac is going to be born. Yitzchak is born. And then it says, the Sarah Shemas Pesach Oel, and Sarah hears while she's standing at the entrance of the tent, and the door was behind him. That means the door to the tent was behind the angel. The angel is talking. She's kind of listening in from behind the door at the entrance, and she's hearing the angel say that in a year from now you're going to have a child. Then she laughs. That's the story. Let's see a deeper meaning that the Zohar says. According to the Zohar, it's not the angel saying, I'm going to come back to you in a year. It's the entire divine revelations that have been hidden in the time of exile are reporting that they're going to return again in the time of the redemption. And that prophecy will start flowing to the world. The godly download will happen on levels that are just superb and beyond. And we're going to see the meaning, the deep meaning, when it says that Sarah is hearing Pesach HaOel, the entrance of the tent. It doesn't mean she hears the angel. She's hearing something else. Let's see. Let's take a look at this amazing passage. Tachazid, the Zohar says, "It's pischa le pischa." There is, in the entranceway to the divine, the entranceway to the experience of the godly, there is entrance after entrance. The commentary over here says that the godly is the entrance to the world of Atzilus. The world of Atzilus is the world of emanation, which is the last stages of the divine. Afterwards, there's already creation. The lower three worlds of creation, like we study so many times. So, but when you're going from the worlds of creation and you're going to enter into the divine, so there is entrance ways. There's pischa la pischa, the darga la darga, and levels of levels. And the only way to know God is to go through these entrance ways. So as the Mefarshim, as the commentators kind of explain, these are, you have to pass through the various different sphirot, attributes. Okay, you move from attribute to attribute. In these various attributes, God manifests. So God's manifestation is higher and deeper and far more expansive in each preceding attribute, the higher you go. For example, the highest the level of divine manifestation is in Chachma. It's the first of the 10 sphirot. The lowest manifestation is in Malchus. Malchus is the kingship. It's the most minuscule, it's the most reduced light. You can't get into Atzilus unless you pass the entranceway of Malchus. So Malchus, the Zohar says, is called Pesach HaOel. That's the entrance of the tent. Because Malchus is called the tent. So the entrance into the world of Atzilus has to go through the attribute of Malchus, the Shekhinah. That's your first level of divine experience. Pesach HaOel. So therefore the Zohar says, what does it mean, the entrance of the tent? Do Pischa de Tzedek. That's the entranceway into Malchus. Malchus is called Tzedek. Kamodat Omar, like it says, now this idea that Malchus is called Tzedek is in Pasach Eliyahu. It's a passage of the Zohar that discusses all the sphirot. We say it Friday night. Some people say it every morning before davening. Others say it Friday night. The Chabad custom is to say it Friday night, Friday before we daven mincha, Friday late afternoon. When we daven mincha, we say a special passage called Pasach Eliyahu. Over there it says Tzedek Malchusa Kadisha. That Tzedek is the holy attribute of Malchus. Called Tzedek. Kamodat Omar, like it says, Pischuli, open up for me. Sharei Tzedek. King David is asking, open up the gates of Tzedek. What is the gates of righteousness? What is David HaMelech asking? The gates of Malchus are closed. Open up for me. Because if David, Avayvam, I want to enter there, Odeka, I can praise God. Which means David is asking, I feel like I'm locked out of the divine realm. Please open up the gates for me so I can enter into the divine realm. How do you enter into the divine realm? You enter from the first gate, which is Malchus. Da Pischa Kadma La'alabe. This is the first gate that one has to enter. Ubahai Pischa, once you go through Malchus, is Chazen, then you can see further gates. Like walking into the palace, you go into through the first entranceway, and from there you can see all the other entrances, Kol Shar Pischinila, and all the other higher entrances. Man de Zachalahai, once someone merits to enter through Malchus, Zachala he gets to know the Kula Shar Pischin, you're able to know the rest of the gates. But if you don't make it through the first entrance, you're still outside of the divine. You have to go through Malchus. Begin the Kula Sharian Alaihu. Because all the other gates or the other entrances, which means the other chambers, are all dwelling on Malchus. They're all that's like the foundation or the opening doorway. From there, you can go into the higher chambers to experience God on much, much higher levels. Okay. But now the Zohar says something painful. And these days, the Zohar is already talking. The Zohar was discussed right in the beginning of the exile. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai is a student of Rabbi Akiva. This is about 100 years after the exile began. So therefore he says, Vahashta, today's days, the Pischeda lo yisyada, we don't know this gate. We're cut off from the divine. Because Malchus is kind of in exile. The Shekhinah is not kind of connected to her source. Malchus, what exactly this means? The lower part of Malchus, for sure, is kind of disconnected and gets drawn along with the Jewish people in exile, in darkness, as it mentions many times in the Zohar, even in this week's Torah portion, that the Shekhinah is laying in the dirt, very, very, very removed and separated from her source. Or like it says, the woman has been chased away from her husband. She's banished. Or maybe there's a higher part of Malchus that is connected above, but that's kind of concealed from the creations because it's too high. And begin the Yisrael begalusa, because the Jewish people are in exile. And v'kulen pischen is talaka minayu. So therefore, all the gates depart from Malchus. In other words, the concept is that what's called in other places, Kutche berichu salak le'ela, HaKadosh Baruch Hu retracts, and he's not revealing himself in none of these chambers. So he's pulling back these chambers. The sphirot are kind of in a withdrawn state, in a removed state. And therefore, lo yachlin leminda ulizdapka. We can't know God and we can't cleave to him. So our connections to Hashem is very, very weak and very, 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 very rare, if we might say. Because these passageways, the entrances are all clogged or shut or removed. There's no way in. And that's the real pain of exile. We can't know God. We don't connect. This is so amazing that the Zohar says this. But the Zohar is like connected. And yet the Zohar, the sages of the Zohar are telling you this. This is actually a statement of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai himself. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai says, Avol bezimna de yifkin Yisrael min galusa. At the time when the Jewish people will go out of exile, zeminun kilun dargin ilon lemishrela. So all the previous higher levels that were once dwelling on the Shekhinah will come back down to dwell on her. Kidikaya is like it should be. Not only will they return like they should be, but they will return far greater than they ever were. In other words, the dwelling of the higher Sephirot on Malchus, it's the concept of the unification of the husband and the wife. The dwelling of the infinite lights will be multiplied exponentially. Then more, not only will it return to what it was, but it will be kedikayais, like this Mefarshim say, even higher than whatever was. And then the people of the world are going to know the higher precious wisdom. And the world will be filled with knowledge of God. These things excite me. What can I tell you? I like reading these Zohars. The world will be filled with divine knowledge. Now, to a certain degree, as it's explained in certain places, from the Arizal, from the Holy Ari, this process started in a minuscule way. Then the Baal Shem Tov intensified. So it's like the return doesn't happen in 1 second. It's all nothing compared to like Bias HaMashiach. And the world will be flooded with higher knowledge. That's what the Zohar says. Have a yod and mekadmis to know that which has never been known before. This is the part I was waiting for. Meaning, more than what we've ever known, even in the time of the first temple and the second temple, where we had incredible ability to connect and to cleave to the supernal realms. Now it's going to be completely on scales that we have never known. Because it says in the verse, which verses are we bringing? V'nacha olav, it will rest upon him. So according to the Zohar, this is referring to a verse in Isaiah and Yeshaya where it says that it will dwell on Mashiach Tzidkenu, will dwell higher levels of godliness. So it's here, it says v'nacha olav, it will dwell. So the Zohar says it's referring not just to Mashiach, it's referring to the attribute of Malchut, the attribute of divine kingship. It will dwell upon him, even though usually we refer to her as her. But here it says, V'nacha olav, it will dwell upon him. What will dwell on Malchus? Ruach Hashem, the spirit of God. Ruach Chachma and Bina, the spirit of Chachma and Bina. These are the first two of the two first attributes. Wisdom and understanding will dwell on Malchus. Ruach Eitza u'Gevura, the spirit of counsel and Gevura and power and might, that is Chesed and Gevura, because the counsel of Chachma, the wisdom, the counsel of Chachma is Chesed, is kindness. So Eitza is like it would say Chesed. So the Chachma and Bina will dwell on Malchus. And the Sfirot are first Chachma and Bina, then come Chesed and Gevura. Ruach Das, the spirit of Das, that's the middle That's the middle channel, which is Tiferes. But Tiferes, when Tiferes rises up, Tiferes goes up into Das, which goes, right? So that we have all three columns. And finally, the Yiras Hashem, and the fear of God, which means there will be, all this will activate the powerful energies of Malchus. And Malchus will be a recipient, which Malchus is where the fear of God takes place. That's Malchus. Malchus is the attribute of kingship, where there's fear. And all these energies, spiritual, powerful, divine energies, will fully be activated on Malchus. And now, once Malchus is now filled with this powerful download of all the attributes, as they're restored and they're all flowing, their faucets are open, the channels are open, and they're all channeling into Malchus, which we haven't had for thousands of years. They're all going to dwell on this lower entranceway. Because the main point is they go to Malchus, and Malchus is called the channel, she's called the doorway to creation. So it's going to dwell on the Zahashar on Malchus. The Iu Pesach oil, this is the face of the tent. In other words, so the infinite one will come to the tent, to the entranceway, to Malchus, and reveal himself through the entrance of Malchus to the world. Now, it's not going to remain ethereal upstairs in some spiritual world for anybody that can climb the ladders up to Malchus. And all this powerful light, since Mashiach is the earthy embodiment of the attribute of kingship of Malchus. So all of this powerful revelation is going to fill Mashiach Tzidkenu, and he will be filled with the fear of with the spirit of fear of God, like no other human being, with the spirit of das, with the spirit of counsel and might, and with the spirit of wisdom and understanding, like no other human being. And above that all, Ruach Hashem, the spirit of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. Begin, and this is the Amalka Mashiach will all dwell on Mashiach. Begin Lamed and Alma, so he can judge the world. Because we learned V'shafat b'tzedek. He will judge with tzedek. Tzedek is kingship. Dalim, the poor. So all this wisdom to judge the world, to inspire the world, to direct the world, to elevate humanity and creation. So this is the end of what he brings over here. But when you look up the Zohar, this is just the passage of the Geula part. Let me read you how this relates to this week's parsha. So the Zohar then continues. Based on that, we'll understand. Hold on. Begin kach, and therefore kadis baser Avram, when Avram Avinu was notified, when Avram received a prophecy that a child was being born, which is Yitzchak, Hai Daga have Omar. It's this level that was revealed to him. In other words, that the communication came from the doorway, came from Malchus. It says, Vayomer, and he says, Shoiv Ashav Alecha Ka'es Chaya, I will return to you. Doesn't say who. Vayomer Veloitziv Man. Doesn't say who spoke. So who's the one talking? Who is it that's speaking? V'dahu Pesach Oil. That's the entrance of the tent that is speaking. It's the attribute of Malchus that's speaking to Avram and saying, Shoiv Ashav Alecha, I'm still returning. I'm coming back. Don't think I'm lost forever. I'm coming back. And you're going to have laughter, Yitzchak, which is Mashiach, and all this. And therefore, Valdon, that's why it says clearly, the Sarah Shaimas, and Sarah hears, Hi Dargadav Ime. She heard also, the prophecy didn't only come to him, it came to her. That's why it says, Madalev Shamas Mekadman, or what she didn't hear before this. Because before this, there was no communication from this level. Now it was. And that's why it says, the Sarah Shaimas Pesach HaOel. Simply, it means Sarah is hearing while she's standing Pesach HaOel, while she's standing by the entranceway. But according to this deeper meaning, Sarah is hearing the entrance of the tent talking. That's what she's hearing. She's hearing this divine communication as it's coming down. They have a mavaser that's notifying. Okay. This is the first passage of the Zohar that I wanted to share with you. Good enough for me? Here's another one, a special one. Later in the parsha, it discusses the destruction of the 5 cities. Actually, in the end, there was only 4 cities that were completely destroyed: Sodom and Amorah, and the other sinful cities. And how God rained down upon them sulfur and fire, and it was like the worst devastation. Actually, all of this is not too far from where the stuff are going on in Israel, this whole situation. So the Zohar brings a pasuk, Reb Chia, in connection to this, where it says, "V'Hashem himter al Sodom v'Amorah," that God made rain down on Sodom and Amorah. Hashem made rain down this powerful, this horrific devastation. So Reb Chia, one of the sages of the Zohar, Pasach, he relates to this a verse in other words, this, when he read this pasuk, Hashem himter al Sodom, it triggered in his head another pasuk. Hine yoim Hashem ba. There's a pasuk in Isaiah chapter 13. The pasuk says, let me read the verse. It's talking about the destruction of Babylon. Yeshayahu Hanavi, Isaiah, is prophesying that Babylon, that destroyed the first temple, is going to face his own day of horror. So the verse says, Hine Yom Hashem ba, behold, the day of God is coming, Achzari, a cruel day, Ve'evra, and wrath, V'charoin af, and anger, Lasima Aretz L'shama, to put the earth, the Babylon, L'shama, to total devastation, V'chata'ah, and her sinners, Yashmid Mimena, God is going to destroy, or is going to annihilate them from Babylon. It's going to be such a dark day that it's going to seem like the people that are living there are going to experience as if all the luminaries in the sky went dark. The stars in heaven won't be shining anymore. Won't shine their lights. It's like the sun went dark. And the moon will not give forth its light anymore. Anyways, God says, I'm going to break the arrogant ones. I'm going to smash the haughtiness of the wicked. I'm going to load. But then it says in interesting words, Oikir enoish mipaz. I will make man more valuable than fine gold. That's funny. What does this belong over here? God is talking about smashing, destroying, and bringing the worst kind of devastation. Suddenly saying, and I'm going to lift man up more than gold. Va'adam mikesam ofer, and people, I will make them more valuable than the pure gold of Ophir. So it explains over here, after the wicked are punished, those who remain will be exceedingly precious. And this is from the translation over here at Steinsaltz Tanakh. The true spirit of man comes to fore during difficult times of war and crisis. When the world stands at the brink of collapse, man has an exceedingly significant role to play. Think about that. In other words, now is the time to step up for humanity. When things are like crumbling, when you see devastation, don't run and hide, step up. God says, I will make precious the simple meaning. So the Zohar connects this, that God says, I am coming with vengeance to destroy, and a day is coming. The Zohar connects it somehow to the story of Sodom and Amorah. Destruction of Sodom and Amorah. Okay. So, but I want to read to you the part as it relates to the redemption. So first the Zohar goes on to explain what is the deeper meaning of these verses regarding the destruction of Babylon, which happened when Persia destroyed Babylon. It happened already. These prophecies were already fulfilled. Then the Zohar says, Rabbi Yehuda said, These verses sadly are referring to the destruction of the Jewish people during the time of the destruction of the temple. These verses occurred as well. Finally comes Rebbe Lazar. Rebbe Lazar says these are all fine interpretations, but I'll tell you what these verses are really talking about. It's referring to the destruction of those who start up with the Jewish people at the end of time. So Rebbe Lazar Moikim Lahanikroi, Rebbe Lazar establishes these verses the day that God is going to uplift the Jewish people from the dirt. And that's a day that is going to be known above and below. In other words, it's going to be a day that will never be forgotten. It will be known everywhere. What will people know? They'll know it's a day of God. They will know that God revealed himself. And now he brings another verse. This is not a verse from Isaiah. This is a verse from Zechariah. From Zechariah, it says, there will be one day. What's that day? The day that is designated for the redemption of the Jewish people. Hu yivad al Hashem, that only God knows when that day is. Vahu yoima denukma. That day is a day of vengeance. It means the day of vengeance. The zamin kuchberichu lenokma meshar amin. God is going to take revenge from the rest of the nations who have abused, butchered, persecuted, massacred, or even if they didn't, but they joined along in the celebration. And they supported the atrocious evil that we've seen 3 weeks ago, and that has been the story of the Jewish people for thousands of years. That means that no one should think that anybody got a pass from Hashem's anger. Now, at that time, when God is going to take revenge against the nations, again, this is not going to harm righteous, good people, but those who celebrate and join along with glee and with joy the pain and the suffering of the Jewish people. Those who stormed the airport yesterday in Russia, in one of these, I forgot already where, which place, seeking Jews that literally lynch Jews because they're fighting the holy war. Thank God no one was harmed. We're talking, God is watching. That's what the Zohar is saying. Basically, everything is on record. Don't worry, it's all there. But when God is going to take them down, it's at that time that he's going to lift up the human being. He's going to make precious the human being more than puz. Puz is fine gold. That means the preciousness, the stocks of the Jewish people will rise, but we're not talking particularly the Jewish people. We're talking about Mashiach Tzedkenu. Mashiach, his honor and his prestige and his respect and his awe from the entire world will suddenly be like to blow everybody away. As the Zohar says, Dom Malka Mashiach, referring to the King Mashiach. The Yistalik, he will rise. The Yisyaker, and he will become precious. Al Kol B'nei Alma, on all the people in the world. That means all of humanity will recognize that they have a king, that they have a melech, they have a king, the likes that no other human being has ever achieved. V'chol b'nei almin yiflechun v'yizdekun kamei, and all of humanity will serve him and bow down to him. The chsiv, as it says in the verse, lefanav yichru, in front of him will kneel, see him large ships. That means the biggest aircraft carriers from the governments and powers that have huge ships will bring all these ships to the service of Mashiach. Malchei Tarshish, the kings of Tarshish. And as the verse continues, the Yishtach v'lo kol malachim, all kings will bow down to him, all government officials, all machers, all stars, or whatever you want to call them. Anybody that's a somebody in the world will be humbled in front of Moshiach. And then the Zohar concludes, Tachazi, come and see. Afagav de nevuazu da itmar al bavel. Even though this prophecy, with these verses that are discussed in Isaiah 13, which talk about a terrible day of vengeance and of suffering to the wicked, even though it's referring to, on the simple read, it's referring to Babylon. However, b'chula utmar, the Torah has prophecy, has many, many layers. So the same prophecy can repeat itself in different eras and different time, and different nuances of the prophecies are then released. So the Zohar is saying a prophecy that happened already can reoccur in another format. So it's regarding the Babylon. It to some degree it hurt the Jewish people as well during the time of the destruction of the temple. And finally, it's going to manifest at the time of Mashiach. How do we know that it's referring to all these things? Because we see in this parsha, which is in Isaiah 13, it says that God will have mercy on Jacob. Nations will bring them. Nations will transport them to their land. That's talking about the gathering of the exiles. So the Zohar is proving that this verse is also hinting to and speaking to about end time prophecy or happy time prophecy. Okay, that's just an interesting Zohar which talks about a destruction of that. In other words, when we're watching evil doing, and thank God Israel is doing now what they need to do, but we should know that God is not going to stay out of this. That's all I can tell you. That what happened in Germany 75 years ago and God kind of kept quiet, it's because the day has not arrived. And what's happening in what happened just now is not going to go just because God has not showed himself all this time does not mean that there's no day of reckoning. And that makes me feel good, I have to say that. Because those who are evil deserve to be punished. It's interesting. So the Zohar, this parsha speaks about it. But what's also beautiful is that very same time, when that happens, and it's about to happen, the elevation of Mashiach Tzidkenu will go up on ways that is just spectacular. There's another very interesting Zohar, which I did not get to prepare over here, which talks about the birth of Mashiach, which is connected to this week's parsha because of the two daughters of Lot. As they had relations with their father and they brought children into the world, which was Moab, and Ruth, the Moabite, is a descendant of them, which is really the grandma of King David, which is the great-grandma of Mashiach. So the Zohar discusses that as well this week in the part, the incredible channels of Mashiach's neshama into the world, the secret channels that it has to take. I will skip that today. I'm not going to go into that this time. I will find another very beautiful piece, short piece of Zohar, which again gladdens my heart. The Zohar is talking about when Sarah says, "Tzchoik asali elikim." God will make, when Isaac was born, Sarah calls him, Sarah, his mother, who is 90 years old now, calls her son Yitzchak, and she says, because God made me laugh. God made a joy for me. So obviously, there is the regular meaning because she has a baby, Yitzchak, but the Zohar is also going to interpret this on the day that Mashiach comes. And the Zohar is going to explain something really beautiful, which I don't want to share until you read it inside. Again, this is in the Zohar in Medrash Ne'elam, which means Zohar has different sections. This is the section called Medrash Ne'elam on Daf Kuf Tez Vav, page 115, Amid Aleph, again in this week's parsha. Laughter God made for me. So the Zohar says, Ksiv, it says, Simchu es Yerushalayim, rejoice with Jerusalem, Vigilu ba, and delight with her, Kol oyhavel, all those who love her. Which is really important to remember. All those who love Jerusalem means not only the Jewish people, all righteous Gentiles and caring, decent human beings who are sticking up for what's true and what's real, including the New York construction workers that I watched the video from yesterday. That was good. That was good. Look him up, anybody you want to watch. There was an idiot that was walking around New York City pulling off signs of Israelis that were abducted, pictures of men, innocent men, women, and children that were taken viciously and cruelty as hostages. So there were signs in Queens, New York, hanging about these hostages. And one lowlife was walking around pulling off these signs. And it happened to be that only in New York. It's New York. New York has a certain beauty to it. A truck of construction workers saw this guy. They got off. And boy, oh boy, did they let him hear it. Not exactly the nicest language to listen to. But this guy was shaking and quaking by the time they were over. And they told him, they let him hear, basically. I mean, you know, so all those who stick up for Israel and all those who stick their neck out for the Jewish people, this is what we're talking about over here. Vigilu ba, they will rejoice with her, kol ohaveha, all those who love her. Sisu ita, rejoice with her, masais, in the great joy, kol amis ablam ala, all those who mourned with her. This is another thing. All the people who cried in the last 3 weeks for what happened to innocent people in Israel, all those who lent their heart and their sympathy and their care to the Jewish people, you're all part of the party. Not one of these gestures will be forgotten. It's very important to know this. The world has to know this. We're not talking about something that's too far off. This is important to remember. We're talking about something very close. But what does the Zohar say? Amar Rabbi Yehuda says, there wasn't a joy in front of God from the day the world was created. That means from when God created the world, God did not have yet a happy day. Like the joy that's suddenly going to burst out. That he's going to rejoice with the righteous, which is referring to the Jewish people, and all righteous people that are going to be part of that joy in the times to come. And the godly revelation and the godly flow and the godly exposure that's going to happen so powerfully with all of its power and all of its light and all of its joy and all of its blessing is going to be so intense. Everybody will point with their fingers. And they will say, this is this God we've been waiting for. We've hoped for him in the darkness. How many times do we keep on saying, Mashiach is coming, Mashiach is coming, Mashiach is coming, Mashiach is coming? And it didn't happen yet. It didn't happen yet. It didn't happen yet. And sadly, some people who can't wait it out throw in the towel. And their hearts get cold and burnt out. But not on this channel. You're not getting that from me. And you're not getting that from Mayon Yisrael. It ain't happening over here. Over here, we're hanging in there. And every day that the darkness and the time seems to get whatever, we even have stronger conviction that he's about to come. And when Mashiach comes, that's when all those that are holding on, and really all Jews are holding on, as you see, incredible awakening now. So at that time, everybody will point to their finger and they'll say, Zeh Hashem kivinu loy. He came through. See, we told you he's coming through. You see, we told you. And here he is. Zeh Hashem kivinu loy. And he brought us the great godly Yeshua, the great salvation. Zeh Hashem kivinu loy. This is God that we've hoped for. Nagila v'nismacha b'Yeshua said, let us rejoice and let us be happy in his salvation. That means that there was never happiness in the world. Do you have any idea what kind of indescribable, incredible joy? A little bit. Let's nibble a little bit on that joy. Let's make our hearts happy today with the joy that's coming soon. And Eksiv, it says in another verse, Zamru Hashem Geyus Asa. Sing to God because God outdid himself. Geyus Asa, he's done something spectacular. He's done something. Geos means something that he can boast with. He's done like a boasting act. Muda zois, and let this be known b'chol haaretz, in the entire land. And then I'm skipping a little bit. The azayan, when this will happen, aschok ba'olam, the laughter will be in the world. Then our mouths will be filled with laughter. Il shaynenu rina, and our tongues with song. This is what the verse says. Sarah finally says, God made for me a day of laughter. Sarah's laughter is referring to Isaac being born, is referring to Mashiach's finally being here. Biyushuasai, and his l'smayach biyushuasai, to rejoice in his salvation. Pretty special Zohar. So we have what's coming to the terrible guys. We have what's coming to that which is good. We see the glory of Mashiach and the wisdom that's going to pour down to the world. This is good. I think I need to apologize for giving this class. I really, really like it. This is great. This is fantastic. Now let me share with you something really cool. Now there's some fascinating end time predictions in the Zohar. Fascinating. But it's so cryptic. And really, really, and I'm going to skip a few pieces because I simply don't understand it either. Most of what it's discussing is that the time, it's literally talking about the time when Mashiach is supposed to come, and it places it in the 6th millennium. And the Zohar has a whole back and forth if Jews are still going to be in exile in this. In other words, we went to exile a couple of years before the beginning of the 5th millennium, 172 years before the 5th millennium started. Then we were in exile the entire 5th millennium, from the year 4000 to the year 5000. And the Zohar seems to imply that's a given. It couldn't have been less. It had to be 1,000 years for sure. Then the Zohar, there's a debate in the Zohar if it's going to be, if the exile continues in the 6th millennium as well. One opinion says, no, it's only 1,000 years. The other one says, I have a tradition. I heard from my father. I got the secret. I know it's going to continue way into the 6th millennium. But during the 6th millennium, and the Zohar goes into a long discussion how the power of redemption is in the letter Vav of the Yud Kei Vav Kei. The Vav is the power of the redemption. Because Malchus, the Shekhinah, is in exile, and the Vav, her husband, comes to redeem her. The Vav is called HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Vav is the power of Yesod, which is the power of Geula, whatever. It's a lot to talk about. So it's going to be in the 6th millennium. And the Zohar tries to figure out when in the 6th millennium. And it gives a whole concept of 66 years. Anybody that knows the year 5666, which was the year that the Rebbe Rashab, the 5th Chabad Rebbe, said the famous discourse, Taf Reish Samach Vav, was a year that people anticipated Mashiach to come on a huge level based on these teachings of Zohar. Because the Zohar keeps on talking about the number 6 and 66, and we know the deepest Chassidus was then revealed to the world. Okay. That has to do with this whole passage about number 6 and the 6th, the redemption and so forth. But I want to read to you a beautiful story. And then I want to read to you one more passage of the Zohar, which is really cool, which I'm making my own interpretation. But based on my interpretation, then the time of the redemption is now, this year. It's my own interpretation, but I'm taking my liberty to say it based on the first passage of the Zohar. So let's read what it says over here. It tells a very cryptic story, but a beautiful story. This one you're going to remember. It says Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi were once walking on the road. Okay, they're walking together. Adav Ozli, while they're walking. Best stories in the Zohar happen when the two sages walk together. They're walking. Rabbi Yossi says, At Karna Hashta, I just remembered the Basar Do Yosivna Yoim Achadem Abba. I remembered that one time I sat right over here where we're passing by with my father. Now, I don't know who Rabbi Yossi's father is. Is it Rabbi Yossi Bar Chalaf? I'm not sure who Rabbi Yossi's father is. But he said, I sat with my father over here. And he said to me, Bri, my son, when you are going to be 60 years old, when you're going to reach your 60th birthday, you are going to find yourself over here. His father, I guess, was some kind of it was a big tzaddik. He had prophetic vision. He tells his son, when you at your 60th birthday, you're going to come to this exact place. Asar sima dechachmas, and you're going to find over here, you're going to find over here a treasure of supernal wisdom. You're going to find, in this spot, you're going to find something really, a treasure of great wisdom. So Rabbi Yossi now turns Rabbi Yehuda. I'm now at my 60th birthday. I'm already, and I'm here. I came over here and I'm not finding it. And I don't know. Maybe what he meant when he said I'm going to find something is our previous discussion that I said. And I think the previous discussion was actually, the previous discussion was the discussion about the letter Vav, about the redemption. That whole earlier discussion that I mentioned to you about the 6th millennium and when Mashiach is coming with all these dates and all these things, that was the last discussion. He says, I don't know if he's referring to that these ideas will be revealed to me, or Amar, or it's something else that he's referring to that I'll find in this place. Now my father also told me, when a flames of fire will like hit you between your fingers, you're going to lose that treasure. In other words, you're going to have it, and suddenly you're going to have fire is going to go between your fingers, and it's going to make you forget it. You're going to lose it. So I said, this Rabbi Yossi is telling this to Rabbi Yehuda. Abba, I said to my father, how do you know this? You're telling me these futuristic events? How do you know? I'm going to have fire. Where do you know this from? So he says, you see those birds up there? I heard them. They're chatting, and from them I know this. He knew the language of the birds, and birds carry the messengers. They're carrying information, and he was able to hear what the birds were saying. And from these two birds that are going over your head, that's how I know. Okay, cool. So now while they're walking around, Rabbi Yossi goes off and he sees a little crevice. He sees a little cave. Sees an opening to a cave. Maybe he wanted a little shade. Maybe he wanted to cool off. Whatever it was, Rabbi Yossi leaves Rabbi Yehuda and he steps into this cave. And in other words, he wasn't paying attention. Maybe he was just thinking it. He finds manuscripts. He sees them in the end of the cave. He sees like manuscripts stuck in between the rocks. And he realized that his father said, you'll find something. So he quickly goes, nothing, but he takes it and he walks out. Even the Pasach, as soon as he opens up these manuscripts, it's like a book of old manuscripts. He sees Shivin Vitrein Glifun, the Asvin, the Asmirul Adam Arisha. He sees the name of Hashem. We know God's name, the highest name of Hashem is the name of 72, which are made up of various different names, which we discussed in other classes. I'm not going to get into it right now. Now, these names were revealed by God to Adam, the first human being. And Buhu have the Yad Kochachmas Adilon Kaddish. And when Adam Arishon had this manuscript with these 72 names of God, he basically knew the secrets of everything. This was the Wikipedia of Adam Arishon. He knew all the secrets of all of existence through this teaching. So he knew the secrets of the angels above, all the supernal celestial beings above. He knew everything about them. He also knew the secrets of those that are behind the mill. I love the words the Zohar uses. The secrets of those that are behind the mill. Behind the mill are referring to the slaves, referring to the klipa. He knew the ins and outs of the forces of evil as well. He knew their secrets as well. The mizgalgalen baser peruchta, those that hang out behind the partition, referring to the partition between the holy and the unholy. So Adam had this information, and with this, he had basically the knowledge of everything. Go to Hidden Elohim. These negative forces that are behind the curtains hold on somehow. This is how he translates it here, into the supernal lights that are between holy and the unholy. Maybe it's referring to klipas noga, that's in between holy and unholy. In any case, in addition to that, he had access to the information of every event that was going to happen in the world. Adam Arisha knew world history to the very end. Ad yoima the yekim anana the bestar myrav, until the day that the cloud that's to the west will be lifted up, the yachshich alma, and will make dark on the world. What does that mean? Again, he brings over here, I'm just giving you commentary. He brings over here commentary from the commentators on the Zohar. This is referring to the cloud that's by the western, referring to the cloud that's by the Kotel Hamaravi, the western wall, the Shekhinah, who's the cloud that always rests by the western side, because we know God never left the western world, the wall. And in the end of days, that God will lift the Shekhinah up, and then there will come darkness upon all the forces of unholiness. So, in other words, Adam Arisha knew the story till the very end. Now, Rabbi Yossi finds this book. Now, whose father told it to him already that he will find that book. Father got the information from the two birds. Pretty interesting birds. Kari le Rabbi Yehuda. So he reads it. He gets all excited. He's not going to share. He's not going to keep this information for himself. So he quickly calls his chavrusa Rabbi Yehuda, and he says, we got it. Let's quickly, let's do some reading. I guess that's where I got my excitement to read the Zohar today. Let's get a hold of the book. Kari le Rabbi Yehuda v'shara lemila behi sifra, and they started reading the book. They didn't get past reading 2 or 3 pages. They read 2 or 3 pages. They didn't get past 2 or 3 pages. The in and asvin of these letters of God's name, they were learning cryptic names of God. They didn't get more than they were learning it. They knew how to read it. 2 or 3 pages of these names of Hashem, till they were already in the inside of that wisdom. In other words, they were transported into the inner realm, and basically they were looking at the Adam files. They were seeing what Adam Arishan saw. In other words, it took them 2 or 3 pages till they cracked in. Well, after 2 and 3 pages, they got into the inside. Even the matal mila besatira de sifra. As they were going deeper and deeper into the secrets of the book, they're talking one to the other. Nafak shviva de esha. Suddenly a fire comes out. The ilula de rucha, and a big wind, and a fire. Ubatash biyadei, and then they hit them in their hands. This avid meneu, and the book got lost. So they had a little sneak preview in the book, but the book suddenly, the fire and this, it hit them in the hands, and the book disappeared. The manuscript was gone. Bachar Rabbi Yossi starts crying. Maybe we're not worthy. Maybe we sinned. Or we're not worthy to know these secrets. Okay, story's not over. So now they come to Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. They have some interesting thing to tell him. They relate to Reb Shimon Bar Yochai what happened to them. And they were so upset that they lost it. Amar Loin, he said to them, Dilma bekates Mashiach din in Asvin Havais the Mishtadli. Maybe you are dabbling in the end time, in the gates of Mashiach. That is hidden in the name of God, that you were beginning to dabble in to find out when Mashiach is coming. Maybe that's where you were kind of poking. You were being nosy and getting into that area. Amalei, and maybe that's what caused you to forget, to lose it. Amalei, Doloya didn't. We don't remember why. Because the whole experience was forgotten from us. Because everything that we experienced during that time was there during that time, and then it was gone. Our memory was wiped clean from this. Amalei Reb Shimon said to them, God does not want this secret to be revealed in the world. The secret of the time of redemption is something that God does not want the world to know. But when it will come close to the days of Mashiach, even little children will be able to find the secrets regarding the redemption. In other words, it's a secret that God is blinding all the earlier generations from, but when Mashiach, even amateurs will be able to crack the codes, will be able to find out. And they'll know end dates and calculations. Is Galia Lakaila. At that time, it will become revealed to everybody. So I don't think I'm even from these little children. These children are not me. They're high level children. But maybe this is the next stage already. It says already, and afterwards it will be revealed to everybody. It says, I'll even convert the nations. Okay. Ma'oz, what does it mean then? When the Shekhinah is going to start getting up from the dirt, when Hashem will lift her up, I'll switch the nations over to serve God together. And at that time, the time of redemption will be known to everybody. Cool. Based on that, I want to share with you just a little something. I'm going to read to you just a little passage. And again, I have no idea if I'm hitting something, but could be. Could be. So it's just pure speculation of why I'm thinking that maybe a passage that's stated in the Zohar is referring to and indicating to this year. This is further in the Zohar Vayeira, Daf Kuf Yotes Amud Aleph. The Zohar is referring to a verse for Zachartias Brisi Yaakov. It says in Leviticus, in the end, in Vayikra, in the Parshas Vayeira, it says, Hashem says, I remember my covenant to Yaakov. Now the word Yaakov is stated with, usually Yaakov is spelled Yud Ayin Kuv, Kuf Vez. But there are 5 times in the Torah when Yaakov is spelled with an extra Vav. So it says that Yaakov stole the Vav from Eliyahu. Because there are 5 times in the Torah when Elijah is mentioned without a Vav. Eliyahu is supposed to have a Vav in his name. And Yaakov is not supposed to have a Vav. There are 5 times in the Torah when Eliyahu does not have a Vav and Yaakov does. And that's because Yaakov, since Elijah the prophet is the one in charge to come and notify the redemption, he's the one who brings the Besura Sagiyula and everything. So Yaakov took collateral from him. He's holding on to it. And he's basically saying, I'm holding, you're going to get your Vav back when you do your job. So the Zohar is now going to talk about how the secret of redemption is hidden in this Vav. This pasuk is referring to the exile of Israel. They got in Goy Galusa, when they are in exile. Ahuzimna the Yispaktin. So the time that they will be remembered by God, Yispaktin Beraza the Vav. They're going to be remembered through the secret of the letter Vav. The Ihu Elef Shtisa. First of all, it's going to be in the 6th millennium. Okay, from the year 5000 to the year 6000 is corresponding to the letter Vav, because Vav is 6. Fine. Upekida b'Vav, and the remembrance is in the letter Vav. But in the Vav itself, it's shis rigei uplak idan. It's 6.5 minutes. Or, as Mefarshim say, 6.5 years. 6.5 moments, 6.5 years. Ubezimno de shitin shnin li'ibuda de dasha. When there will be 60 years to the beginning of the opening of the door. In other words, there is a door, which that door is locked with a it's called a, what is it called when you have a not a deadlock, yeah, like a deadlock. So after 60 years will pass, when that deadlock and the door starts to be opened, now the door, let me explain something. The door itself is Malchus. We learned Pesach HaOyel. Malchus is called Zahashar. However, the one that opens the door of Malchus, that's Yesod. The sixth sphera, the sixth attribute. The Vav comes to open up the hay, to pull the hay, to open up the door of Malchus, which takes place the Elef Tisa in the 6th millennium, as we said earlier. As Yakum alakosh Shemaya Pekida Lebrati de Yaakov. Then God will remember the daughter of Jacob. Umahu Zimnim, from that time. That means after 60 years of the opening of the door, until she will. So the Zohar, it seems to be implying that there's two parts to the redemption. One is called Pekida, a remembrance, and the other one is called Zechira, a stronger remembrance. In other words, the beginning of the redemption begins at 60, and then until she has the Zechira, the complete redemption, a full remembrance, it will pass Shitchninu Palga, 6.5 years, Umeyahu Zimna Shishninu Palga Achranin, and then another 6.5 years. So together, 13 years. The Inan altogether, Shivin Itlas. Together, there's 73 years. And then Mashiach's kingship will be revealed in the world. Bishisin v'shis upalga. Okay. Okay. So let me try. And then the Zohar talks about powerful wars that are taking place. And then the Zohar talks about how the children of Yishmael will go crazy at that time. And they'll come up on Jerusalem and make a mess. So which, is pretty much connected to what was going on. So here's my take on this. When do you start counting the 66? What's the 6? So I'm going to use over here, not, again, what occurred to me, literally occurred to me an hour ago when I'm reading this. So this is what occurred to me. The sphirot that we're talking about over here are not necessarily energies just of time, but also energies of people. So we know that the 7 Chabad Rabbeim, 7 Rabbeim of Chabad correspond to the 7 Sefirot. The 6th sphere is the previous Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, who comes to America, establishes Chabad in the United States of America. He's the one who notifies the Jewish people back during the Holocaust that the time of the redemption has arrived. He's the one who makes la'alta l'tshuva, li'alta l'giyula. You do tshuva, Mashiach is coming. He started the entire fanatical Mashiach energy in Lubavitch. Although it was quiet, of course that it was by all the Rebbes before him, but he brought it to the forefront. His name was Yosef. Yosef is the 6th. Okay. But he's not the Redeemer. The Redeemer is the next generation. The Rebbe is Malchus, the 7th. The opening of the door of Malchus, the way it could be understood, done by the previous Rebbe, is when the Rebbe takes the mantle of leadership in 1950. Because that's when the door of redemption opens for the world, because the Rebbe starts his now we all know that the Rebbe didn't want to be Rebbe. As the Rebbe was fighting it tooth and nail, he would not be Rebbe. He was forced by his father-in-law. And everybody knows that. I mean, if you read the inside story, like the Hasidim, because the Rebbe kept on saying no, the Hasidim took a minyan and they went to the previous Rebbe, to his resting place, and they cried and they davened and then afterwards the Rebbe didn't resist so much. It was clear that the previous Rebbe is involved in it. The Rebbe would never do it without him communicating with his father-in-law and his father-in-law telling him he has to do it. The story, and again, I don't have what to back it up right now, but I can back it up another time. It's clear that the Rebbe is being pushed by his father-in-law. In addition to the fact that his whole connection to being the Chabad Rebbe is through his father-in-law. And the Rebbe doesn't even see his leadership as his own leadership. He keeps on blaming it on his father-in-law. So it's all the energy of his father-in-law. But when the Rebbe became Rebbe, the Rebbe opens up with the mimer is Basi Lagani, I came to my garden, which he's talking about the 7 tzaddikim who bring the Shekhinah down, which is the beginning of Bias HaMashiach. Anybody who had eyes and ears that time saw Mashiach unfolding in front of their eyes by that mimer. But it's the beginning of the opening of the door. What does the Zohar say? After 60 years from that moment, so 60 years from that moment of the Rebbe became Rebbe in 1951. So 60 years, or 1950. The previous Rebbe passes away in 1950. Or the truth is, no, it actually works with Tafshin Yud Aleph. 5711. Let's go with the Hebrew years. The Rebbe becomes Rebbe 5711. 60 years after that is 5771. 60 years afterwards. That's 60. Then there's another 6.5 years. What was the 6.5 years? That brings you to 5777. 5777. So I think, if I'm not making a mistake, in the year 5777, that's when a lot of crazy messianic things started happening in the world. All I can tell you is that Mayon Yisrael started pumping Mashiach energy crazy then. I went nuts then. And why? Because during the Trump years, I'm sorry, I'm bringing him in, there was a lot of Mashiach phenomenon in this world. You remember the joy the Jewish people felt when Rubashkin was freed? It felt like Mashiach was here. When Jerusalem was announced to be there, Mashiach was here. When the Golan Heights was given overnight like this, Purim, I mean, they were events that were like spectacular. I know a lot of people don't want to give credit and don't want to remember it. Guys, we were on steroids those days. We were rolling high. And then the darkness kicked in again. But there was like incredible things happening in 5777, 5778. But the Zohar says that's the beginning. That's 6.5 years. That's 66.5. But then the Zohar says it's really another 6.5 years. So that brings us 73 years. 73 years from Tafshin Yud Aleph. 73 years from 5711 bring you to Tafshin Pei Dalet, 5784. And that's when the revelations of Mashiach ben David is supposed to happen. So it fits very well, by the way, that it says, and the Zohar calls this Pakida, Pakad. When are we going to? And we know that Pakad, Pakadati, the words Pakad, Pakadati is the exact numeric value of 5784. Or not 5784, 784, which is Tafshin Pei Dalet. So I think maybe the Eibishter led me to this. Maybe I didn't have what to teach this. I never do this. I never teach plain Zohar. And I opened this up before. Here we go. This is my interpretation again. I like the idea when 60 years from when Ibra the Dasha, when they're opening up the door. That to me is 1951 when the Rebbe becomes Rebbe. That's Malchus in the world, the establishment of Malchus in the world. Give it 73 years. Cool. And then at the end, the Zohar talks about the war that's going on in Israel. I mean, you could interpret it on this. It's talking about, let me read the last words over here. The Zohar says, because the Zohar goes into like really interesting things that are going to happen during that time. Stars and things and swallowing. I mean, it's very hard to understand what this is hinting to. But then it says, on that time, Bnei Yishmael, let me read it, the children of the Arabs, of Yishmael, Zimnan Bahi Zimna Las Arim, Kol Amen da Alman, they're going to come with other people in the world, Lemesa Yerushalayim, to come against Jerusalem. I will bring. Now, by the way, this attack, even though it happened in the south of Israel, the Hamas, Yamach Shemam, they called it, may their names, if whoever doesn't know what that means, it means may their names be blotted out. They referred to this as an Al-Aqsa, campaign. In other words, it's a campaign regarding the temple. This is a fight for Jerusalem. This is called a war against Jerusalem. And it says, Yitzyatzvu Malchei Eretz, that the kings of the world are standing, Veloiznim, and big ministers, Noistu, that means the UN, the ministers all, this is mamash what's happening. Kings in the world and ministers, Noistu, are convening Yachad together al Hashem against God, V'al Mashiach, and against his anointed one, which is against the Jewish people. But it says God is laughing. Uksiv, in the next verse it says, Yeshev Hashemayim Yitzchak, God is having such a laugh because he sees that all their scheming and all they're doing is going to be nothing. Hashem Yilag Lama, God laughs at them. And after this, then the Vav connects with Malchus, and it creates new souls that we spoke about, and then whatever. And those who are going to be lucky to be in that time, it says, is going to enter into Shabbos. Fantastic. And if you need extra proof, sadly, that what when it says that the nations are coming on Jerusalem is what we witnessed 3 weeks ago, I would read to you the prophecy in Zechariah that prophesizes this war against Jerusalem. It's a little bone chilling because it's a little painful to read. It literally described what happened. Vasafti as kol hagoyim al Yerushalayim, I'll gather nations on Jerusalem, Muhammad to war. The Nilkada, the city will be captured. Nashasu habatim, the homes will be looted. Vanoshim tishakavna, the women will be violated. The Yatza chatziha ir begoyla, half the city will be taken out into exile. The Yesera amlo yakares min ir, but the rest of the people will not be cut off from the city. This was a bone-chilling account. This could have been written the day after what happened 3 weeks ago. Literally what happened. The cities were captured in the Negev. The stunning, no one believed that could have ever happened. Everything, sadly, it described, literally, we have video of what happened, the horrific carnage, everything. Half the cities, meaning so many hostages were taken out. Every day there's more already listed. Now they have 238, the number that they're saying. But the people will not be cut off from the city, which means the cities will not remain in siege. I don't know exactly. Seems like, and because the Israeli security teams were able to come back in and not everybody was killed, and now, thank God. But then the next verse is comforting. The Yatza Hashem, God will go out, v'nilcham b'goyim, and he will wage wars on the nations. I hate. Ki yoyim alachmai b'yoyim krav. Like the day that God fought on the day when he went to war, which is the day of when he fought the Egyptians. So that's good news. But I think the worst we've passed already, thank God. Shouldn't need any more. And hopefully these discoveries are true and real. May Hashem help. We should see the redemption today.